The physically strongest of all protector races, cultural, dutiful, the lone protectors of Idros, the Trolls. Hello everyone and welcome back to both Aphalas and the channel. Today, in continuing our Protector Races mini-series, we will be discussing the Trolls of Idros. Alongside the majority of the Protector races, the Trolls emerged in the same year as the rest of them, but the difference was they were the only people to emerge on the Isle of Idros. It was just them. Idros obviously being one of the twin isles, as you can see on the screen. The Trolls as a people, when they emerged, were divided into three groups, whilst they all remained on Idros. The first of these groups was the Anaroth, who emerged in the sort of northern sector. I would point this out, but I didn't get the annotation right because I've got a script up, so it's the Alok area right up the north, and Idros is the isle on the left. It's not the one on the right. The one on the right is Naros. Then after that, you have the Talajane, who emerged around the Lokoth Taleknir area, so they were the closest to the actual bridge of Talok. And then the last were the Bataroth, who emerged pretty much through Palaket and Palavan in the southern coastline, southern southwestern coastline. Whilst the Anaroth and the Talajane both went on to develop into Clan Anarothi and Clan Talakoth respectively, the Bataroth were the only one of the three to actually split into two clans at the start. The Clan Batragia and then the lesser-known Othoyin. Clan Anarothi and Talakoth would be the ones who would make it the start to the maneuver of uniting all the trolls under the Talon-Sur banner. And they would form an alliance without having any real issues with any major conflict between the two of them. And eventually, again, they would go on to form the realm, and Batragia originally would be resistant towards this, but eventually they would go back and join them after some more convincing. But their ties did always remain looser than Anarothis and Talakoth's, which, given what happens later on in the lore, is actually kind of ironic. And then Clan Othoyins, fading from the history books, because they do not have that long in the history books, came as a bit of a price of their involvement in the first conflict of Gallicaros. If you would like to have a bit more detail in that, I go into a bit more detail in regards to the Stone Elves and the Beast Elves and the Sea Elves, technically, on the Elven video. But this was obviously the same conflict that spelt the demise of the Stone Elves, and pretty much the corruption of the Beast Elves. Clan Othoyin were trolls that came as part of the forces that Amendiel had called to arms to aid the Stone Elves. It was a mix of trolls, goblins, some Dracon enchanters were in there, Sparrowhawks. He called as much as he could to try and aid them. And ironically, Sea Elves ended up on both sides, as did Ogres. And though it was notable how fiercely they fought, like their Batragian brethren, being able to physically contest even the Ogres of Hedoteleg, which are arguably, out of all humanoid creatures, the strongest on all of Aphalas, physically, the cost to the clan themselves was too great, and by the time they returned to the Twin Isles, their numbers were beyond repair to the point where, after the next following years, they actually assimilated into Clan Batragia. This effort alone, however, was actually the chief motivator to a leading mentality within Clan Batragia, which put them at odds with primarily Talakoth and occasionally Anarothi, with the belief that instead of shoring up defences and holding the Twin Isles, they should actually sally forth and go and aid the rest of Aphalas and be aggressive towards Nagrasak's forces. Even though the Trolls' primary task, which Talakoth hold probably more to their standard than any of the others, is the defense of the Oasis of Spirits. And throughout Aphalas, and I will go more into detail with this on another video, but throughout Aphalas you've got various key structures: the Temple of Galeria, the Spire of Callus Tenir, the Temple of Naros, and then the Oasis of Spirits. Pretty much if the Oasis fell, it would... If the Oasis and the other three structures all fell to Nagrasak, it would pretty much give him the ability to drive what was Galeria and is now in present time Aphalas the Dragons out of existence, pretty much, and prevent them from ever being able to hold a physical form in the world again. Although the same argument works for Nagrasak's pyramids. Whilst Clan Batrakia would quickly take to more lighter movement in terms of combat and focusing quite heavily on seafaring to try and challenge the ogres where they could, and Orothi would take to mastering the horse, they would still hold some ships, but nowhere near as prominent as Batrakia. And Talakoth chose to opt for disciplines of defense and more administrative duties when it comes to Idros, even though they were the ones on the front line, ironically. But with the three forces united, they would actually become one of Nagrasak's fiercest challenges, and one that he consistently tried to reserve until he, from going after them properly, until he knew that Destinal and Shah could no longer resist. Because if they, and Lossokoth as well to an extent, because when you actually look at the map, and if I can, I'm just going to try and bring up an image of it. I will say that this is actually being done as part of a stream as well, this video, so... Where is it? There you are. Right. Okay. And then, sorry, just going to have to do a bit of poodling here, because it's a big image. Okay. I know you can't necessarily see all the regions, but yeah, that'll do. So effectively what we have is that, actually let's just do that, and then can we crimp you in? No, that's not going to work. Right. Okay, so effectively what we have is that Nagrasak and his forces were based on Shah, the Isle of the Lost, and from what you can see there, Destinal and the Twin Isles were both the sort of key proponents. And yes, I will also expressly state, by the time the books are actually set, and also, ironically, shortly, not that long after where I decided to start up doing the lore work, 280 BGS, Galakaros, the sort of isle between Shah and the Twin Isles, yeah, that no longer exists. That's been destroyed. And that's the point, is that when it comes to Nagrasak and his focus, his whole case is he's trying to take out Destinal and the Twin Isles, and also the Ajati, who were present for quite some time on Shah, and the Forest Dwarfs obviously were as well. But he wants to eliminate Destinal because A, the humans could be a risk if they were allowed to unite, and also B, the Dracons with their magic are one of his key fears. And But if he was able to conquer Destinal, it would leave the Twin Isles isolated because on Kivris, the island that's like connected off screen, on the left and the right hand side, that has the humans of Honor, the humans and goblins of Honorcrith. It has ogres who are not loyal to Nagrasak. It's got the half ogres. It's got the sea elves. It's got obviously the first demons of the wyverns as well. It's got a lot of power, but it still has the ruby mist, which pretty much to all eyes except for a very select few makes them understand that, makes them think that that land no longer actually exists. It's just vanished. So that is a case in point, and it is actually worth noting that I can't zoom in on it, and I'm not going to try and pick up another map. But to the north of the Onokrith region, there is a little section of writing that you can see there. That was the Arnavan colony, and that was a colony of Anarothi trolls. And honestly, and I am going to be completely frank here, I haven't actually decided if they're dead or not. So it could be that they lost contact and the settlement ceased to exist, and that could be a mystery, or it could be that they are still alive. I have openly not decided that yet, which could be for some interesting stuff for the future. But, I mean, aside from all of that, the only other protector race left after everything would be the Kirindrek, over in the north of the guard realm of Arakirin on Arasin, but Arasin is cut off from the rest of Aphalas by the A-Gate barrier, the arcane barrier that they built up pretty much to prevent the threat of the Ice Elves escaping that land. So the Kirindrek have purposely cut off their land from the rest of Aphalas, as well as the steppe tribes and the humans of the Fayoun. And then the only other place you've got is the Arak Nilith archipelago, which it's got some Kirindrek, it's got some humans, it's got some Dracons on there. But honestly, it's such a small amount of land that anything they could significantly try and... It's almost like one of those places that... It's almost like a Lothlorien in the sense where Nagrasak would never be able to... Well, he could potentially conquer those islands, but it would take him so long just because of the... Just for a few different reasons. One of them is the sheer factor of the case you've got both protector races who are true users and wielders of magic, both concentrated on that archipelago. But you've also got the ancient guardians of Notarg's people, the giant scorpions. And I don't mean giant scorpion like one that can be like the size of your hand. I mean giant scorpion like the size of elephants and things like that. They are titans, basically. And then the humans of the Fayoun as well. But Nagrasak, by this point, he knew about Arno Kivris, he knew about Arasin, he kind of knew about the Arak Nihilith, but he was so far away and so difficult for him to get any true sighting of what's going on over there that, yeah, his focuses were Destinal and the Twin Isles, and the trolls posed such a major threat united to him that he needed to make sure that they were tied up properly whilst he went after Destinal. Because if he went after Destinal alone, it wasn't going to work. And same as the vice versa, because that's the problem. They could... Yeah. Hysteria. Sorry, I've got stream chat on. That is such a key problem because of how quickly the Twin Isles and Destinal could aid each other. And then you've also got the Ajati as well, who can literally fly, so they can get anywhere very quickly. So, yes, anyway, we will bring it back to this one. Alright. Okay. Yeah. The key thing, though, about the Trolls is, despite the fact of how major of a threat they pose to Nagrasak, aside from a select few of them, they absolutely hated magic to the point where they would refuse to use it in any form for the most case, and most of the ones who did end up starting to practice it ended up actually becoming outcasts. One of them, who's currently unnamed, actually led the Arnavan colony. And this would actually sometimes put them at odds with the Dracons, just a more philosophical odd than anything else, although because of the distance between them and the Kirin Draco, I mean, because if we go back to the other map for a second, like they can get to the very north of Arasin, but the Kirin Draco are at the very south. So, or not the very south, but fairly south. So it would take, and also if the trolls were to try and get there via land from the north, they would either have to go through a literal magical based forest, mountains, or the ice elven territories, which is not a good idea in any weather or threat. However, despite everything, despite the lack of animosity between the clans, they would not actually escape the divisive and corruptive whispers of Necrosac or Senetvia. When the events of 280 BGS onwards were going on, what came to be known as Tonreef's War, it was the first sort of major war where he was focused as the key architect, when in reality what it was a much more coordinated effort by Nagrasak's servants to I have to go back to the other map for now. To basically hit all the protector races at once. He got the Dark Elves on. He got the Dark Elves of Steotha to hit the Ijati at Kalas Tenir. So he got his own Mieda demons to go after the dwarves in Alaros. He got the ogres of Sarakarth to go after the trolls. All the while, he got Tonreef to actually coordinate with some more Dark Elf forces to actually hit Destinal from both sides. And that actually set the seeds for some pretty major changes in Destinal's history. And also brought forward some of arguably its biggest badasses, one of them being Thoronzia, ironically. That is definitely not part of the reason why I picked his name for the Twitch channel. That you've got him, you've got Sauron, not Sauron, the human king of Revlaror, who managed to actually wound Tonreef about 3 times. And when Tonreef was actually defeated, the trolls and this was when they were united under Talancer, and it was under King Sekron, who was an Anorothi-born troll. And they were pretty much struggling to hold off the Ogre onslaught. I have named the Ogre King of the time, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. They were holding pretty much for quite a while, they were holding sort of a kind of skirmish line between the farms of Naros, but eventually they got primarily pushed back to the Bridge of Talok, although some were forced to actually seek refuge in the warden city of Kalon Arith. And just to explain the significance of Kalonarith, it is a city that is basically built as the only gateway into the Underlands, which is the entire north of Naros, and it is entirely subterranean. And so they fought fiercely and they kept fighting on and off for quite a while, but eventually the ogres were able to push beyond them, and the ogres did have some demonic support with them. But eventually, whilst they could not actually conquer Kalonarith, they pretty much just had to encircle it. They pushed through and attacked the little. And it is a bit difficult to see, but there's a couple of towers near Talaknir. They are actually a sort of fortification. If you've read Lord of the Rings, it's kind of like if the Ramas Ekor was for a bridge, and they tried to push through, and they did actually manage to break through because they did something a bit tactical. And I won't go into detail of these conflicts because those will be for other videos, but they sent their ships. Obviously, the ogres are some of the. Bar the sea elves, the ogres are the best seafarers in Aphalas. They sent some around and they assaulted Palaket, which is the biggest port in all of Idros. And they assailed it with several thousand marines, and they pushed through whilst the main force pushed through and attacked and besieged Talaknir. So two of the major regions fell under siege simultaneously. Eventually, however, Sekron was actually able to push them back, and they were able to continue to push them back further and further. Then some, ironically, aid came from Destinal, and it was in the form of Kelern, who was at the time the Prince of Kafaltir, the Kingdom of Kafaltir, the southern human kingdom. But he came alongside some support granted from the dwarves, and they were able to free the trolls who were trapped in Kalonarith, and then band together with Sekron and his trolls to pretty much annihilate the ogres in a battle around the Western Farms, because the ogres were able to get out of the bottleneck on the bridge in the nick of time. But this is where, for the trolls, things actually start going quite wrong. And this is when we're truly into what is known as the Idros Years of Sorrow. Sekron gets set because there is a mystery that happens at this part of the end, and also unbeknownst to everyone, during all of these times between this and his defeat at his fortress on Tharlog, which I know is a bit difficult to see, but where Tonreef's domain is, that sort of little extension on the left of Destinal, Tharlog was his original fortress, and it's in the centre there. But unbeknownst to everyone, he actually escaped, and he managed to smuggle himself into Idros whilst they were fighting on the front line. And Sekron gets sent to join with one of the Bladed Councils, which is a council of all relative leaders of the Protector race. And he goes there to pretty much inform them how the trolls are, and also what happened at the end of those battles, which was weird, and it troubled the humans of Kafaltir, troubled the trolls, and it troubled the dwarves, which is the factor that after the final battle to actually free Naros, there was a load of cries that could be heard from the western coast of Galakaros, and all the ogre ships that were there providing support had just vanished. And no one had seen that happen to ogre ships, or any ship really before, let alone the ogres. So it warranted a lot of concern. And so Sekron left, and he placed his son Berenhir in charge as a sort of regent. And that is when Tonrith made his move. And I will just point out that there is a notable figure worthy of mention here, and that is Orohorn, who is effectively the captain of the Garda Calanaris. But yes, Tonrith is able to get the better of Berenhir and corrupt him fairly quickly, to be honest. It kind of shows how ill prepared they were for something like that. And he pushes Berenhir to start making maneuvers and start gearing the trolls up pretty much to march out and actually go after the ogres. Actually sail across to Saragarth and assail them, showing that they are weak. The ogres are weak, that they are struggling, and all the rest of it. And when in reality Tonrith's actually working in secret with the forces of Shah, trying to lure the trolls into a trap. And what actually happens is Berenhir tries to prepare this, and there is resistance from it, which actually starts seeing some trolls actually leave for Lossagoth under Letkern, although he does remain on Destinal for a while. Not Destinal, Idros. Eventually Sekron gets word of this and he returns. And he confronts his son about it, and the confrontation goes wrong, and it winds up with Sekron being arrested, as well as several of his key advisors. And he's getting branded as a traitor and things like that, and it, surprisingly enough, it actually divides the trolls. They don't quite know what to believe. And pretty much the division kind of falls into the clan mentality again. Anarothi is up in arms about it because Sekron is one of theirs. Talakoth are a bit divisive, with a good proportion going over to Berenhir's side. The Petrarchian trolls are just neutral in all of this. They are just staying out of it. And the Oasis defenders, an elite force of the trolls, quickly actually turn and side with Anarothi. And so, as does Orohorn, although he keeps his distance because he knows that his force is really not anything significant to be able to contend. But Berenhir pushes on with this agenda, and it quickly goes out of hand because it winds up with him executing his father. And the death of Sekron is something that sends ripples through all of Aphalas. And it seriously severs any union that the Trolls had. Anarothi, just quick under Letkern primarily, get heavily up in arms. The Oasis defenders are actually and this is the interesting thing, Berenhir is actually quite smart. He knows that he can't take on Anarothi one-on-one, because the Talakoth trolls took a heavy brunt against the ogres and they're still recovering. So he tries to go south, but he gets stopped at Bolsakir and Rothasir, talking to both the forces in the regions, essentially saying, like, stand by me or fall. stand by me or get out of the way, but if you try and resist, you will fall. And the Oasis defenders actually rushed in to the regions to try and support the people because Beren had turned his people against themselves. And somewhere between Rothasir and Balsikir here, there is a significant battle. And it is a battle that heavily, heavily slaughters a good number of the Oasis guards, as well as a lot of the Rothasir and Balsikir people, which then leaves Palakat, where somehow I think Letkern gets there. Can't wholly remember. But Palakat quickly just shores up his defenses as quickly as it can. And then you've just got this horde of trolls following a corrupted Beren here. And they've just massacred a load of their own. And they've got Anarothi to the top. They've got small regions there. Small regions in Palakat and Palavalan. And then they've got Kalanaris all resisting them, as well as trolls on Rossakoth. And this turns quite nightmarish because the trolls have fallen into a civil war, but before the civil war can actually go anywhere, something else happens, and that is the crisis of Galakaros. The trolls and the ogres, the two forces that, if you bring up the map again, are probably the easiest in proximity for forces in Galakaros to reach, as well as the ogres that had disappeared. And I will go again, Galakaros will get its own video with the crisis, but to point out what the ranks of Senepia held, they had ogres, they had half-ogres, they had ruined servants of troll, human, elven descent, they had the beasts of Kalaj, they had goblins that had been corrupted from northern Haraketh, they had the undead from the jungles of Obsidian, and several other creatures. It is just a torrent of a force, and it quite literally just bursts into Naros, overwhelming most things. It actually wholly forces Orahorn all the way back into Nasir Labeth and his people, and they seal the door shut. They do not leave there for years. And yes, Mines of Moria was a bit of an inspiration for that. But Senevia and her forces, they burst onto, and the forces here are actually led by an ogre who has been trained in a mix of obsidian magic, which is the necromantic magic to a limited extent, but also the fact that he can raise the undead is due to the case that it's obsidian magic twisted by corruptive magic. So they burst onto Naros, they burn the Gardens of Arith, and then they push on against the trolls. And Beren here tries to challenge her forces, and gets absolutely stomped, pretty much. And it gets to a point where Beren here flees to Lokoth, and he is trying to prepare other forces, mustering others to try and go out and attack again. And Tonreef, ironically, realizes the amount of danger they're actually all in and the mistakes he's made, and he turns around and he kills Beren here, thinking that the corruption that he has then put into this figure has now spelt the demise of the trolls entirely, which is not really something Nagrasek ever actually wanted. And especially when they would have been a key proponent if Senepia had ever returned. This was bad news times 1,000, pretty much. So Tonrith kills Beren here and then flees again. He gets quite good at that. And the trolls, most of the trolls are forced to flee to Lossakoth. And they have some holdings that remain on Talonser, but it's not that many. But yeah, eventually they do rally back up with the humans and the Dracons, and they are able to come back and reclaim Idros and Naros. But this is years later, and this is probably the even more tragic part given how significant of a character he actually is in the lore. By the time they reach the city of Kalanari, by the time that they free the city and fight off those attacking it, they manage to open the door to the Underlands and see the trolls there. Most of them are malnourished, they are sick, they have been stuck there for quite some time under siege, unable to get out. And the Seal of Beth only has limited resources. Some that is sustained by magic, but even then it's not massive amounts. And by the time that they have actually got there, Orohorn had actually died of an old wound. And it's two key troll figures, Sekron and Orohorn, and honestly both of them have very unceremonious ends. One is executed by his son, deemed a false traitor, and the other dies in a city encircled. And pretty much from then on, because in all fairness, I haven't pushed that far beyond that in the timeline. From then on, the trolls never properly united after that. Like, Talonser had been a realm that lasted for centuries, but that small little nuance of what Tonrith was able to get Berenhir to do, even though they understood it, what Berenhir then also did pretty much permanently ensured that whilst the trolls would remain peaceful and they would remain allied and cohesive with one another, they would never again be united as one force. So that is even beyond the books as well. That does not change. But yes, that is the trolls. I know I did go off a couple of tangents there, but in all honesty, the trolls have probably one of the more complicated ones because they are not intertwined in the chaos of Destinum or Shar. They are more defensive orientated than anything, which kind of means that they get, aside from altercations with the ogres, they tend to stay out on those things, but they are still important and significant. And I mean, they are the ones that are closest in line with the ancients of Naros. But after Talonser gets dissolved, pretty much, and they go back to clans Anarothi, Talagoth, and Petragia, they form a council of the chieftains. So when it comes to anything that affects all the trolls, so any threat on world size or threat directly to Idros, the trolls have a council now, which means one person can't go and make the really stupid decisions. And I mean, Berenhir's choice to try and go and attack the ogres, yes, it was influenced, and yes, it was going to be a trap. But it could have still potentially worked, in fairness, because the ogres, whilst the trolls, and this will be done more in detail in an ogre video, but the trolls and the ogres were basically open targets for Senetvia when Galakaros struck. And there was very little either of them had left in the tank to be able to resist it, which is why so much land was able to get gathered so quickly. It's because Senetvia didn't need any form of mass onslaught or anything because there was just so little left to actually resist her, and that what was left was tired. and also not necessarily united. Yes, so onwards after that. And in terms of the actual key weapons, because the trolls do actually have one of the weapons that is able to kill like the likes of Senepia, like Nagrisak, like Galerian the Dragons, and Mendiel. They have the Scarlet Axe. Now, the problem with the Scarlet Axe is there are about 3 different points in the lore where it gets stolen. That doesn't happen to the Bow of Calistenia, it doesn't happen to the Spear of Arakan, it happens to the Axe of Adalar once, but it happens to the Scarlet Axe like 3 times. And it's not great, to be honest. And it always kept the trolls heavily guarded. It was thinking the Scarlet Axe is missing, are we about to see a major strike or something? But so where the trolls are in the moment at the lore is where I've gone to in the timeline is that Talonser is still a thing, but it's not going to be for much longer. There is now pretty much no troll garrison in Kalon-Ares, which is now effectively ruins. And you have the Arnavan colony, which is sort of doing its own thing. It's not really here or there. It's not known whether it still exists or not, but even if it doesn't exist, that doesn't rule out the potential of there being a renegade sect of trolls that managed to make their way down to Onokrith. So they could potentially be there. Or heck, they could have managed to somehow get around and make it into Hedotelic, but I sincerely doubt I'll be writing that in. The trolls are not the most powerful race on Aphalas or within the ranks of the Protector races, but the fact that they are able to build so much strength by having a relatively peaceful land is what made them so threatening. Because the trolls are not like trolls in Lord of the Rings or anything. In this, they are cultured, they are disciplined, they are skilled. But yes, for now, that is all for today. It's been a bit of a odd video, I will admit that. Tried to go about it less script heavy and more kind of casual mentality for this one. And because I write the scripts, but I don't want to be like read line to line. And if you want some notable trolls that were mentioned, you've got Sekron, you've got Beren here, you've got Orahorn, you've got Letkarn. You have one of them who is in the Aphalas Shadow War. That is the D&D we're doing at the moment, which is going to be lore implemented into the lore. And you've got the unnamed one who leads the Arnavan colony, and then you've got others who I will not reveal the names for because those are book characters. But yes, again, for now, that is all. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Please do check out the description for the links to the ebooks, socials, Twitch, GoFundMe page if I put that in the description, Ko-fi page which will be in the description, and please do check out the other videos in this playlist or the other content. If you're enjoying it, please do like and subscribe, share with your friends. The next video is, and I'm going to say this now, is either going to be the Kirindrek or the Goblins, because after that, after those two, we are done with the Protector races. And the Goblins aren't even technically a Protector race, it's just a small sect of them that did get sort of like an honorary mention of the protector races, so it'll be a bit like the elves. Their whole history is going to get tied in and connected, which is quite fun because I haven't really explored into the goblins yet. No, this was not pre-recorded. This is sorry on stream chat. So yes, it will be the Kirindrek, and then it'll be the Kirindrek and the goblins, and then we are done with the protector races. So I'm thinking we will possibly do a little dabble. We'll do a little dabble into the neutrals or the evil side, I think, or we might do one on the beasts, which could be quite interesting because a lot of beasts play a lot of significant roles in Aphalas. But yes, thank you all for watching, and until next time, welcome to the Kingdom of Aphalas and the world of Fellow Mind books.